Welcome back to another episode of So What Does That Mean? Today we are looking at the advice trap and why being told isn't understanding. Let's talk about the false comfort of advice. I know previously when I've gone to speak to someone who's a specialist in their field and they've spoken in a confident tone, they've used technical language, they've had authority, and it sounded like clarity, but it actually wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. And, advice often answers the wrong questions. Who's asking the right questions? You're going to experts for advice. Are they telling you what the question should be? I mean, they're giving the advice. The answers it should answer, can we, not should we, or what happens next. People confuse explanation with understanding. Just because somebody delivers the information to you confidently doesn't mean that they actually understand what they're talking about. It doesn't mean also that you understand what they are talking about as well. Advice without context creates false uncertainty. If you were to say, oh, you've done really good, I'll give you 3 stars. 3 stars. Hey, but it was on a 5-star system, so you've only done mediocre. Oh no, wait, it was only 3 out of 10. So all of a sudden, you now provide context. It changes the narrative. It changes what the advice actually means. It complies. It's standard. That's normal. These are all technical terms. These are all terms that get consultants or people delivering advice out of trying to explain to you the reasons for that.
And do you think that those type of phrases shut people down?
Yeah, because
from asking further questions?
They're not used to hearing it, right? So if somebody says to you, if you ask them, well, why do I need to use this size beam? And the answer is, well, that's because it complies with the code.
Right.
That's great. There's thousands of codes. There's a number of them that apply to steel beams.
Okay.
So the context that you are providing to them, the analysis that they're producing for the result that you want, you can have several different size beams.
Right. Okay. And do you think that's why people don't push back also?
Yeah, because they're not confident. They're coming to the expert because they are the expert. Right. You haven't done the 6-7 years of study or whatever it is to be able to provide that advice. You're coming to people to advise you.
And do you think that, that authority and the tone and the words, the right jargon, do you feel like that also people feel pressured not to question, not to ask questions and not to sort of clarify the advice, I suppose?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to trust in authority. So who's the authority? What's the authority? We come into them for advice. What are they advising you on? You're coming to them because they know more about a specific topic than you do. But if they don't know what the reasons behind the advice they're giving, I would question the accuracy of the advice.
Right. So you're saying authority can end curiosity, and that could be dangerous?
Yes. Ask questions, challenge questions. A little thing that I like to do is the 5 whys. Ask why, and then with an answer, ask another why, ask another why, ask it 5 times, and generally after the 5th time, you've gotten to the root cause of what the concern might be.
Can you give us some examples of advice that's been technically correct, but it could have been delivered better or the outcome could have been different?
Yeah. I mean, I can give you some advice of, engineers that I know who have spec'd, steel beams for renovations, and the steel beams themselves they comply with the industry standard. There's nothing wrong with what they were doing. But the use case made no sense whatsoever.
Right.
So a particular case being, if the beam itself, the depth of the beam actually extended what the ceiling was. So the beam would then show through the ceiling, even though there was a false ceiling to be able to hide beams.
Okay.
So while the beam itself handled the loads,
Yeah.
structurally it was fine.
Yeah.
You just now got a beam in the middle of it.
Aesthetically, it's
Yeah.
not. Yeah. So, and what about, like misunderstanding
Yeah.
and the consequences of misunderstanding, I suppose, too?
Yeah. Well, you've got to ask yourself, well, how did this happen? You've come to an expert. The expert has provided you a result. Okay. So at what stage did you question the expert? Were you able to question the expert? Were you able to talk to them? Were you able to have a face-to-face, a phone call? How did you talk to them? Did you come to them and go, you're wrong? Or did you come to them and go, hey, why did you do this? What's your basis behind this?
Yeah.
When you engaged the expert, did you, give them a clear scope? Did you go, I don't want any beams to show in my...
Right. Okay. So, technically no one's lied when they've given you the advice, but in
questions haven't been asked.
context, it can't be applied.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Or it wasn't explained correctly.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to perspective, right? So, I mean, technical experts they assume that people know what they're talking about. As in, if you come to a non-technical client, they ask you to explain it. You explain it. You assume that they've got some base level knowledge of
Understanding.
engineering.
Yeah.
When ultimately they don't. They've got their own goals and objectives for the task at hand.
Yeah. I suppose you also it's not about, blaming. I feel like in today's society, everyone wants to blame someone for why something doesn't work. But I suppose it comes down to the advice was technically correct. However, just the context of it, the engineer didn't take into account, certain factors. So it wasn't technically wrong, but it wasn't technically right either. So, I suppose it's difficult to say that the advice wasn't right in that context. You are right, but you are wrong, essentially.
Yeah. And in that example as well, how are you meant to know that you're supposed to ask the question or provide the scope to say, I don't want a beam shown in my living room,
True.
for example?
True.
You wouldn't expect that is the result that would be delivered. That's got to be thought about as well. And that's on the person giving the advice.
Okay.
You've got to understand where the client's at. What are they trying to achieve? How can I get them from A to B by running my numbers, doing my calculations, and making sure that we apply practical context.
Okay.
I think there are 3, red flags on any sort of advice.
What red flags in what? Bad advice or good advice?
Any advice.
Okay.
Anyone giving you advice. It doesn't matter whether they're your engineer, town planner, accountant, lawyer, anybody giving you advice.
Mm-hmm.
If they're giving you advice without any implications,
what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if they give you the advice and they're not held accountable for that,
okay,
or they're not signing off on it. So, for example, we might provide some initial advice on something, but we're not providing a Form 15 because it's just general advice. Ultimately, that advice is subject to the context of the situation. In 6 months' time, you might do the same inspection or you might do the same process and your advice may change.
Okay.
Because over time, context changes.
Okay.
Advice that discourages questions.
Okay.
So
that's another red flag.
That's another red flag. For me, I want to know. I want to get inside my client's head. I want to know where they're at as I'm delivering the advice to them. I give them an opportunity to come back with their questions. They might not have any questions at that point, but I let them sit with it for a little bit, allow them to come back and actually ask the questions and challenge it. We issue our documents as a draft first, and I always say to everybody, rip it to shreds. Come back with every question you can. I'm not going to get offended by it. Come back with every question and I'll give you an answer. And then, whether you like the answer or don't like the answer is how we proceed further from there.
Right.
And the other red flag is advice that skips consequences. it comes down again to the accountability side of things. So if I'm giving you the advice on, say, a bill of quantities, I don't know if you know
What's a
what
bill of
bill of
quantities?
quantities is.
Yeah.
So bill of quantities is essentially a document that someone's gone through your design plans and tallied up exactly how much earthworks in terms of volume, so cubic meters, how many lengths of pipe, what type of pipe, how many manholes, how deep, what size they are. So they put all that into a list. You then take that to the supplier, the contractor. They price off that amount of
Right.
bill of quantities. So if somebody gives you the bill of quantities, and you go and order all that material, and you go on site and you go, actually, I didn't need 25 meters of pipe, I only needed 4. So what are you going to do with the extra 21 meters? Take it back to the supplier. You've paid for it. It's yours. So who's accountable for that?
Right.
So yeah, I'd be questioning that.
Okay. And so what questions should people be asking instead?
Look, if you don't feel comfortable with what you've been provided, ask it.
Okay.
Ask the question. There is no stupid question. I think you're paying for the advice. We are, as consultants, we're educated in a way to be able to deliver that advice to you. So ask the questions.
Okay. And the better question, like what is the better question? Can you, how can advice be given? Like how do we
How do you break it down?
break it down?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think every single piece of advice should answer, what does this mean for me?
Okay.
So I give you some advice. Joe, you need to invest a certain amount of dollars in this land over here. That's my advice to you. The reason being is because property market's going up, it's easier to subdivide or whatever it might be. What does that actually mean for you?
Right.
Do you have the money? What's the rates going to be? Are we going to have a rate hike? Am I going to be able to service this loan?
Do I have the money to subdivide?
Is it going to be a COVID 27?
Yeah.
All of these things you've got to consider. What does this actually mean for me? That's the key one. And then, what happens if I do nothing?
Oh, it's like, what are the consequences for me if I do nothing?
Yeah. So if I do nothing now, if I just sit on this advice and do nothing, what does that mean?
Right. Am I missing out on an opportunity? Is this going to cost me too much money in the long run? That sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. You've got to think about it. Well, if I do nothing for 4 months, what will happen? And if nothing's going to change in 4 months, then you've got 4 months to sit and think about your decision properly to be able to do that. Now you can go back and tally up what the cost of 4 months is to you, to be able to do nothing, before you actually go back with an informed decision,
right,
back to your consultant. So you should be asking that question. What happens if I do nothing at this point now? The other key question is, what happens if I get it wrong? What happens if I make the wrong decision? What are the implications of the wrong decision for me? What are the implications of the wrong decision for my builder? What are the implications of the wrong decision for you?
And how are they going to know if that's the wrong decision?
You're not going to know if it's the wrong decision until you are there in the present of that decision being actioned out.
Right.
And
okay.
the consequences are shoved in your face.
Right.
Generally, in a design or a planning phase, that's happening in the construction stage. In the construction stage, so you would get some advice. You would say, your advice might be, I recommend using RCP, reinforced concrete pipe, for this particular thing here. The reason I recommend that is because HDPE or an alternative might be too expensive, or it's easier to come across, or I've got some spare RCP in my backyard that I can just give to you,
yeah,
or whatever it might be. Okay, so then you've got to consider, okay, well, what happens if I choose to take that advice and put it on, and that was actually the wrong decision, and I've now got a piece of RCP in the ground that doesn't, perform or service to what it needs to be at, and there's leaks in it. Now I've got to go and get it repaired. So what are the
Okay.
costs and who's then accountable for that advice
Okay.
down the track? So
Right.
obviously the cost of repairs of an RCP once it's in the ground is significantly more expensive than changing the words RCP on a drawing.
Okay. So just to reiterate, every piece of advice should answer, what does this mean for me? What happens if I do nothing? And what happens if I get it wrong? And should that become your signature concept moving forward?
Ask questions. Ask every single question. What does this mean for me? What happens if I do nothing? What happens if I get it wrong?
Yeah. Okay, well, that draws a close to this week's podcast. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about the moment most projects quietly go wrong before anyone realizes it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.